Hello beautiful people. So it's been an interesting day today. With this 30-day challenge, it's been very up and down. That I think giving myself the time to really feel has unravelled some things within me that suddenly it's like fuck, I've still got some real self-worth issues. I've still got some fear of my own power, and that seems to be a soul level, going kind of into the history of all of humanity, all of the feminine essence, all of the male essence, and all of the lessons that we've learned combined. There seem to be a lot of lessons that are coming up in terms of feeling that I let people down, that I messed up, and that I was selfish, and just really deep issues that are really obviously what's keeping me holding back. I never knew quite what was holding back before. It was a lot of stuff in this life as well, making me smaller than I am. But then actually it was like, oh, I see, you start to see where these things stemmed from, and also the necessity of them as well. So even though it brings you a lot of sadness, some of the things that you had to go through and that you had to put other people through as well, other souls through, you see the necessity and why it had to be the way it had to be, why you had to take lessons in the order that it went in. So it was kind of a soul journey from arrogance and lack of empathy into this journey of I wouldn't say betrayal, into this journey of obviously being torn apart and having to find our own ways in the world, having to be trying to think of the words, having to fall from grace and to lose ourselves, to feel such deep abandonment, and then getting lost in trying to mask the pain, trying to numb the pain in sex, drugs, rock and roll. And this is just a kind of soul's journey, or an archetype's journey of what souls have had to go through to get to where they are now. So now the journey is fusing the light and the dark back together. It's fusing everything that we learned from the darkness, from living in fear, from living in pleasure to numb the pain, and on the other side that beautiful heavenly light and ethereal and gentle way of being. It's fusing those together into the warrior spirit that's very strong, who knows who they are, but is also infinitely loving and infinitely gentle, who's not afraid to push barriers and to be an alchemist and to be a chameleon, to change who they are from one minute to the next, to adapt to situations, to bring out the light in any situation. So it's quite a empowering way of being, and there's some very inspiring people who I think are living that. I saw this video today of this lady who is a music revolutionary, and she's writing songs about revolution against like ISIS, and she's Kurdish, and obviously I'm not, like, I think that there is a place to fight, but at the same time to fight for peace is a very different vibration, rather than just keeping this this light against the dark fight going on forever. We need to learn how to meld them, and it's a difficult subject, because when it comes to peace and war, we want there to be a magical situation where it's just going to cease like that, and obviously there is going to be a transition, so we need to be infinitely loving and forgiving of people who have been a part of that journey, because they saw it as the only way of dealing with that situation. And actually, if you're on the front line, if you're in war, you kill or be killed. There is no other way sometimes. So there's a lot of darkness to be faced head on in this world, not to hide from it anymore, and not to get lost and feel guilty, but to see it in all that it is, and to find ways, to find solutions, and to find compassion within any situation. So it's quite a different way of looking at the world from the usual, like in the spiritual community it's become very much everything's light and ethereal and beautiful, and society is the enemy and darkness is the enemy, and we need to repress it, we need to get rid of it, we need to shut it out. And the more I'm coming into the depths of all that I am, psychologically breaking down all that I am, and looking at all of the darkness and all of the light in me in complete recognition and non-judgment, the more I'm seeing that the spiritual path is one of integration and one of balance. And if we try and repress one side of who we are, or one side of society, all you're doing is putting it in a little box and waiting for it to explode. So we need to gently dissolve those barriers and to learn to dance with the energies of light and dark, rather than repressing them. So what I'm seeing with my own journey and my own power in terms of the light and dark is that when you're not in balance, there's obviously a destruction. So with this kind of darkness and this strong energy, if it's out of balance and you're too much in that energy, then you go into cruelty, you go into arrogance, you go into like violence, and it's just too strong an energy. You just become a destructive force, and if you go too far the other side into this light energy, this very gentle energy, then you become apathetic and you become lazy and you become fearful and guilty and closed off and numb. And I think I've definitely tipped the scales both ways throughout my life and throughout my evolution as a soul. And now I'm learning to integrate both sides and to try and come into a balance, come into a stillness in the middle, and come into a self-acceptance. And that can be quite a hard journey. Like today, I was just overcome with so much emotion and so much letting go of stuff. So just in the car, like to and from my journeys, I was just crying like most of the journeys. And what was coming up was just like It was just me feeling guilty and me feeling ashamed for all of the wrong that I've done, and not feeling worthy, not feeling like I was good enough to be on this journey, not feeling like I was good enough to be loved. Like really, really deep, deep issues coming up. But I just sat with it and I was just like, okay, if you want to feel that way, let's dive into it. Who gives a fuck if I look like a nutter crying in my car? Like, I'm not psychologically unstable for doing that. It's psychologically healthy. What's psychologically unhealthy is repressing the pain for all of these years and having to diet down with alcohol and drugs and sex. This is what we do in our society. This is what a lot of people do in our society, is we try and numb the pain with all of these little cruxes. But all we're doing is we're just holding in this stagnant energy, these emotions that are so deeply ingrained within us. We're just holding them down until one day you just need to explode because you have had enough. And quite often that will come into people having midlife crisis, and it will come into that destructive force, as I said, coming out of balance. People will just go, fuck this life that I'm living, and they'll just destruct everything that they built up because they just need an outlet for that rage, and God forbid who gets in the way of that. So I'm starting to see now why people like Osho in the scientific scientific I think you also but spiritual community, these are my words now, why he was quite an inspiring individual, because he came up with this kind of dynamic meditation which someone did it at uni for me, and I had no idea what it entailed, so I booked a room that was above a common area at uni, and one of the parts of it is to let loose and to let your anger out, let your rage out, and everyone in there was just like, fuck, just like going fucking nuts, like shouting, and I was like, oh, I think I chose the wrong room for us to do this in, because obviously at the time I was deeply not able to let those emotions out, so I was just stood there like a rabbit in the headlights, like there's no way I'm going to let go of my emotions, because it was a terrifying prospect. Whereas now I'm starting to see that power of being able to let loose and to know that you're safe within yourself, that you're not going to lose control, that you're finding an outlet for that rage and that emotion to come out in a healthy way. I remember one of my family members did a workshop with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's who's very big in the hospice movement, and they basically had to go in there and had to just like beat the shit out of like a pillow and just shout and scream all of their rage out, and it was very powerful to read about that experience that they had, because obviously sometimes sort of in the healthcare setting and all kinds of other settings, and as I said, the psychological setting, like I have a degree in psychology, that sometimes it's seen as like talking about it is psychologically the way to deal with it, to spend years and years and years in therapy talking about your problems over and over again, whereas I think that the body actually, like our cells, hold a lot of memories and a lot of trauma, and like dance and things like that, and like all sorts of movement is really, really powerful. It can bring up issues that you had repressed for years, and then actually you suddenly get these memories and things come up and you think, oh, where did that come from? But it's being released by your cells to be let go of. And I experienced this the other day when I did like a tantra workshop online, and we had to do this like breath of fire, and I find like Kundalini yoga and stuff really, really powerful, but again I found it quite difficult to use my voice to open up. So in that workshop we had to sort of do this, you had to sort of like put your hands up and then just go like whoo, and like let out the sound, and I was doing that for a little bit, but I felt really closed off because I knew that my partner was in and my neighbours were upstairs, so I felt a bit self-conscious, but I kind of still had the thought, like that energy of doing that, even if I wasn't loudly vocalising it. And then as I finished that, I just burst into tears out of nowhere. I was just like, whoa, where did that come from? But because it was a tantra workshop and it was talking about like sexual trauma and letting out all of the times where we'd like repressed who we are, and let ourselves sort of be used and let our power be taken, I felt like just the movement of actually doing that tapped into some of that trauma that I was then able to let out. Whereas before I did the body movement, talking about it in the workshop was not enough for me to be able to tap into that pain, because when you're in your mind state, you're still able to repress those emotions. So you're still able to go, oh yeah, I can see where that trauma's from, but I'm fine, it's all fine, kind of thing. And then when you tap into that movement, sometimes it unlocks something within you, and then suddenly you're like, I'm not fine, I have this this deep rage and emotion in me that needs to come out, and you've been repressing it for so many years because you didn't even know it was there anymore, because you became so good at being able to repress it. So what I'm saying, I think, really is, don't be afraid of who you are, and be able to tap into that pain. Don't think, don't be afraid of getting lost in it, because it needs to come out somehow. So if you don't do it now, you're just going to go from relationship to relationship, from addiction to addiction, just trying to cover it up. So why don't you be brave and just tackle it now, if you feel brave enough to do so. But at the same time, every part of our journey has its time and place, so you will know when it's time to go on that specific journey. So my hats are off to you, brave warriors, because it's quite a mission, and it's scary, and you're amping up that power within you, and it can feel quite overpowering. But the whole point in it is to know that you can ride the waves of your own power, and you can be in control. You don't need to make yourself smaller than you are anymore. Now is the time to come back to your essence, to come back to who you are, and to not be afraid of who you are anymore. Back when I was younger, I had this real power within me. I had this love of life, or love of destruction at times. So as I said, I was out of balance, but being dead inside on the other side of the spectrum is completely boring as well. So let yourself have the gift of being all that you are. And I'm just going to pick an angel card just to give us a last little message. And I hope you like my t-shirt. It says, please, please, please let me go to bed. And I quite like the irony of it, because I was just doing exercise, so I was just, as I said, there's balance in everything, so be the warrior, be strong, and then let yourself be gentle and lazy afterwards, because you deserve it. Oh, and the same card is coming up that I had again with the Divine Masculine and Feminine, the Divine Order card. So as I said, it's very, very relevant in terms of balance. It says everything is how it needs to be right now. Look past the illusion and see underlying order. And I will just read. It says, a win-win situation is brewing, one with solutions that are fair to everyone involved. This requires you to have blind faith that heaven is working behind the scenes to extract the highest good for all. Ask me to buoy your faith if it wavers. Use positive affirmations and prayers to keep your spirits high. Above all, make sure that your conversations about this situation include positive and optimistic words and phrases. You are so powerful that your positive thoughts can speed up the resolution along even quicker. So, step into your power, because the world needs you, and once you are alive and you're on fire, we're going to light up this world and shake it up and make it beautiful and amazing again. So it's a part of the process. Alright, lots of love.